There have been many reports throughout history that people can smell death before it happens. In today's r/paranormal thread, we look at a post by username deleted titled, "I can smell death before it happens." It's absolutely weird. When I was a child, my grandma and I would deliver meals on wheels to elderly people that belonged to her church. I was always saddened, but never surprised, when people would pass. I could tell they were about to pass by the way they smelled. I had mentioned this to my grandma, but she thought I was just being a weird kid, and maybe a bit of a rude kid at that. I always assumed other people could smell death as well, but maybe that it was a rude thing to mention. My grandma died when I was fairly young, only 8, and I remember her starting to smell like all of those other old people smelled before they died. She had a heart attack. When my mother told me my grandmother had died, I was heartbroken, but not surprised. I always told her I knew she was going to die. I could smell it. My family was shocked by this, and that's when I realized this wasn't a normal thing that everyone shared. I remember them asking me if my grandpa was going to die soon. I said no, he lived another 11 years. And if this other old lady in the extended family, my cousin's Nana, was going to die. Again, I said no. She lived 9 more years, and she was already ancient and in poor health, so nobody believed me. Anyway, I still have this ability. Recently I smelled it on my dad, and I started freaking out, crying. Somehow, I knew that he still had time to change his fate, and I told him so. He and my mom both brushed it off, but the very next day, my dad started having intense stomach pains. My mom urged him to go to the ER. He didn't want to, but she made him based on what I said the day before. It ended up that he had diverticulitis with a perforation, and had gone into sepsis. He had to stay at the hospital for 3 nights, getting IV antibiotics, and there's a bunch of stuff he can't eat anymore due to his condition. I was a creepy kid in other ways, and would often say prophetic things in my sleep, according to my mother. I couldn't have any electronic toys because they'd go haywire within a week. Being an only child, I had massive amounts of toys, so there were a lot of examples of my electronic toys needing to be thrown away because they'd go nuts in the middle of the night, and it terrified my mom. I'd always turn this one Jesus statue upside down as a toddler and say, "There," which I don't remember. But my mom always likes to tell me about it because apparently it freaked her and my grandma out. I've had various run-ins with ghosts and other odd things, most notably a black cat with entirely black eyes, even black sclera, during broad daylight that approached out of nowhere, meowed at my friend and I, and let us pet him. Even sat on my lap when I kneeled, then promptly proceeded to disappear entirely behind a tree. Weird crap. My friend remembers and was creeped out. The cat's eyes didn't seem gooey or diseased, just black. Can anyone smell death before it happens? It's hard to describe the smell itself, but it's almost sickly sweet, like rotting syrup. Still, that's not a great descriptor. I'd also love to know if anyone else has ever seen a creepy cat with black sclera before. On to the comments. First comment by Water Alchemist with 24 points. People knew they were about to succumb to the Black Death when they smelled a sweet scent that was actually their organs being putrefied. There are other examples of people being able to smell their own afflictions. You must be sensitive to this smell. Comment by Jignup215 with 23 points. My daughter would say, "Grandma smells bad" to my mother-in-law, and we would always yell at her for being rude because she certainly didn't smell. A year or so later, she was diagnosed with cancer. After rounds of chemo and radiation, she was cancer-free, and I remember her coming up to us and saying, "Grandma did not smell anymore." This happened when my daughter was 5. Comment by Purple is a Flavor with 19 points. I'm a nurse, and my specialties are hospice and geriatrics. I too am familiar with the heure de death. People's appearance also seems to change when they are actively dying. It's really hard to explain, but they seem to lose their characteristics that make them uniquely them. Comment by Bloodspades with 18 points. I can smell it too. An earthy, sickly sweet is the closest description. It comes from the sweat of people's bodies who are starting to shut down. Otherwise, the smell of death in others doesn't usually hit until after they die. That kind of smells musty and a little bit sour. It's really hard to describe. I also have problems with electronics. I couldn't wear those digital watches growing up because I'm guessing my body's electrical field would just fry them within a few hours. I can also feel when lightning is going to strike close by, It's a nice little, oh crap, jolt of awareness that makes all of your organs feel like they froze in place, before your body moves on its own to duck for cover. Not fun, but it saved me and a few friends a couple of times. Comment by Amaranai with 15 points. I can smell death too. It's a sweet, flowery smell, but in a heavy, stomach-churning sort of way. Like strong-scented flowers rotting. I also tend to drain batteries and electricity from electronics when I'm tired, and if I'm stressed or anxious. I blow light bulbs when turning the light. Comment by MCRV11. I can't smell death per se, but I know the feeling of death. I've been in rooms that have had someone pass in them not long after they passed, or in rooms as someone is in the process of dying. And I describe the feeling of death as being stuffy, warm, and hazy, like a hug that will eventually be never-ending. Note that these deaths were all relatively peaceful despite being due to cancer and other reasons. Comment by Frizzle Shrimp with 13 points. I'd love to. About the deaths. The first time she said anything like it was when we went to a restaurant we were regular customers at, because it's super close to our house. It was run by a family and we all knew each other. One day we were eating and my mom out of nowhere said, "Oh no, I think Senora Roberta is going to die." We're from Mexico City, I should add. My sister and I were freaking out and said something like, "Oh my god, Mom, you can't just say that about people. What the heck? Why did you just say that?" And she said that she could just see it. That she looked different. We just continued eating and later forgot about it. We didn't go to the restaurant for about a month or so, and the first time back we saw a black ribbon and some funeral-like decorations. A black ribbon is a tradition. You put it outside the house when someone dies. That's all I know about it. We asked who died. And yes, Roberta had just passed away. We just turned to look at each other, and my mom was very freaked out, and also, like I told you so. The second was one of her childhood friend's moms. They went out to have dinner one night with her family, and when she came back, she said that she had seen that her mom was going to die, and she was very sad about it. But she couldn't tell her friend, of course. We all knew that it was most likely true. So, like a month after that, the mom got sick and later died. The third, it was her boyfriend's dad. She saw it one day, and I can't remember if she said something to her boyfriend, but she did mention it to us, my sister and I. The dad later got cancer and died a few months after. She did eventually tell her boyfriend, and he was sad, but he is also used to this kind of stuff with my mom, so he took it well. There was one other, where we were driving and my mom turned to look at another car, and she said that the person in the passenger seat looked like he was going to die. We of course never knew what came of that, but I wish we did. That's just the experience with the deaths. There's a lot more to say about my mom, but that's kind of a very long story. Basically, she has a history of different people trying to do bad stuff to her through magic, kind of like Santiera and stuff similar. She finds out about it because she's a believer after all that had happened to her, and she always finds a witch or a sorcerer that reads her energy or the tarot, and they just know what's going on and help her. The people that had helped her also said to her, like most of them, that she had some special energy or natural power in her, and that she should try to do something with it. There are also people who work with white magic. They don't duck around with the bad kind of magic. She does channel her energy cleansing herself, us, and the places we live. She doesn't go further than that with magic. She recently found her yogi, Yogananda, and she got deep into meditation and healing that way. I say healing because she had a couple of very, very, very dark years when all sorts of stuff happened, health, family, people ducking her over, and stuff like that. The way she found her yogi is also very magical, weird, and special. But I feel like I've written too much by now. I could write a book about my mom and experiences. Honestly, maybe one day I will. I just feel very blessed, happy, and honored to have her as my mom. So listeners, I will repeat the question OP asked in their thread. Do you have the ability to smell death? If you do, or if you know anyone that does, please leave a comment below with this. I'm sure most of us listening are very interested to hear other stories related to this. Anyhow, that's been all for Tales from Reddit today. If you liked the video and you're new to the channel, please definitely give us a subscribe and if you don't mind also hitting that bell notification icon next to it just to be notified of future videos, it'd be doing us a real big benefit. Please also smash that like button to help us out with that YouTube algorithm.